Ever stop to think about how something like your laundry detergent connects to this huge global market, a whole world you probably don't even see? Well, today, we're doing exactly that. We're taking a deep dive into one of those hidden worlds, the sodium percarbonate market. Seems niche, right? But it's actually incredibly significant.
Yeah, and our guide for this is a really comprehensive report, the Sodium Percarbonate Market, Global and Regional Outlook to 2033. Our mission today, go past just the raw data. We want to pull out the really important bits, the nuggets that show surprising trends, crucial insights from what looks like just a pile of numbers. We're going to unpack global revenues, look at how different regions are performing, and track growth forecasts over, well, more than a decade.
Exactly. And for you listening, getting a handle on these kinds of market dynamics, it's actually a great shortcut to being, well, genuinely informed. It helps you see the links between everyday products and these bigger industrial shifts, global manufacturing trends, economic changes happening right now. It really shows where the actual growth is happening, often away from the headlines. Okay, let's get into it then. Let's unpack this, starting with the big global picture. So sodium percarbonate worldwide. It pulled in about $553.7 million back in 2021.
Right.
And looking forward, it's expected to hit $635.4 million by 2025.
Okay.
And then push up to a pretty substantial $836.7 million by 2033. So that's growing at a compound annual growth rate, a CGR of 3.5%.
And, a 3.5% or GROW for a global market like this, that signals really solid, consistent demand. It's not that explosive tech growth, but it's reliable. It shows there's a fundamental and growing need for this chemical.
All right.
Just for context, sodium percarbonate is basically that eco-friendlier solid version of hydrogen peroxide.
Ah, right, the oxygen brightener.
Exactly. Widely used in laundry detergents, but you also see it more and more in dishwashing stuff, textiles, even some water treatment. Its versatility is really key to that steady global demand.
Okay, so that's the global view, steady growth.
Yeah.
But when we zoom in, that's where the story gets really interesting, doesn't it? You start seeing these surprising areas of really intense growth and then, unexpected slowdowns in other places. We're going to walk through the regions and maybe think about, what does this specific trend tell us about that region's economy?
Sounds good. Let's start with Asia Pacific. It's clearly the biggest regional player here. In 2021, it was worth $249.725 million.
Wow, almost half the global market right there.
Pretty much. And it's projected to hit $284.659 million by 2025, and then a really impressive $364.8001 million by 2033. That's a CAGR of about 3.15%.
Okay.
And within that huge region, China is just dominant. It accounted for over $100 million, $100.14 million back in 2021 alone.
Right. But it's not just China's size in APAC that's interesting, is it? India's growth really stands out.
No, absolutely.
It went from about $32.7 million in 2021, projected to hit nearly $54 million, $53.822 million by 2033. That's a strong CAGR, 4.091%.
Yeah, that's quite a bit faster than the regional average.
So what does that faster growth in India tell us, especially when you compare it to, say, Japan? Japan's CAGR is slower, 2.255%, and Taiwan's even more modest, just 1.217%. What's going on there?
Well, it really suggests a divergence, different stages of economic maturity, different industrial paths. India's faster growth, that probably reflects things like increasing urbanization, a growing middle class, and definitely expansion in domestic manufacturing, especially, packaged consumer goods, detergents, cleaning stuff. They use a lot of this chemical.
Makes sense.
Whereas the more mature economies like Japan and Taiwan, their markets might just be more saturated, or maybe their industrial output growth, where you'd see new demand for this chemical, is just naturally slower. It's less dramatic.
Okay, interesting contrast. Now let's shift over to Africa. The report calls it one of the most promising growth regions.
And the numbers back that up.
Yeah, the overall African market, it starts smaller, sure, only about $36 million, $35.991 million in 2021. But it's projected to almost, well, more than double, actually, to nearly $79 million, $78.774 million by 2033. That's a really robust PAGR of 6.417%.
And digging into that, one thing really jumps out. The highest KGR in the whole report is actually in the rest of Africa segment.
Rest of Africa.
Yeah, it's clocking in at an incredible 7.329%. It's set to go from just over $6 million, $6.37 million in 2021, to over $15.5 million by 2033.
Wow. So what does that mean, rest of Africa growing so fast?
Yeah.
What could that include?
Well, that's the interesting question, isn't it? When you see rapid growth in a kind of broad category like that, it could be a mix of things, maybe new infrastructure projects popping up, local industries starting to boom, or just this sort of collective acceleration across lots of smaller economies that are quickly adopting, modern cleaning methods, industrial processes.
So widespread development, maybe less centralized?
Possibly. It indicates something significant happening across a broader base. We also see Nigeria, that's growing strong at 6.272% CAGR, and South Africa at 6.115%. They're clearly major drivers, too, reflecting their more established industrial bases.
Right. Okay, let's move over to the Middle East now, also showing strong growth there.
Yeah.
The market was around $37 million, $37.099 million in 2021, and it's projected to hit just over $60 million, $60.152 million by 2033. That's a healthy CAGR of 4.06%.
And within the Middle East, the UAE really stands out. It's showing a strong CAGR of 4.716%, going from about $5.6 million in 2021 to nearly $10 million, $9.751 million by 2033.
Okay.
And Saudi Arabia is also a big player, growing at 4.343% CAGR. That's from roughly $13 million to over $22 million by 2033.
So steady, strong growth in those key economies.
Yeah, it points to, ongoing efforts to diversify their economies, lots of construction, and just a rapidly expanding consumer base driving demand for cleaning products, industrial chemicals, that sort of thing.
Okay, now let's cross over to Europe. Here the picture seems a bit more mixed.
Yeah, definitely varied.
Overall, Europe was about $89 million, $89.148 million in 2021, expected to reach around $130 million, $130.312 million by 2033. The overall CAGR is 3.327%, kind of close to the global average.
But like Africa, there's a rest of story here, too. The rest of Europe segment is showing surprisingly high growth.
Wait, how high?
A 6.956% CAGR. It's jumping from about $7.3 million in 2021 to over $14 million, $14.101 million by 2033. That makes it one of the fastest growing segments in Europe.
Wow, nearly 7%. Again, what could rest of Europe mean here? Are we talking Eastern Europe, the Balkans, or...
That's the puzzle. It could be specific emerging economies there, or maybe it's a collective surge across lots of smaller industrial sectors in various countries just now adopting more modern, effective cleaning tech. It's definitely worth watching. Also within Europe, the UK shows pretty robust growth too, a 4.378% CAGR.
Okay.
Going from nearly $14 million to over $23 million. $23.312 million by 2033.
But then you contrast that, the UK and the rest of Europe, with some of the, let's say, more mature European markets.
Right.
Like Russia, its CAGR is only 2.057%. Italy's at 2.602%. And Luxembourg is really modest, just 1.323%.
Yeah, it really highlights how diverse the economic situations are across Europe, even just looking at this one chemical market.
Okay, let's guide this deep dive over to North America now. Here, the picture looks more like stable growth, maybe less dramatic.
That's a fair description, stable.
The overall market was about $105 million, $105.206 million in 2021, projected to hit roughly $152.5 million, $152.459 million by 2033. The CAGR there is 3.199%. Again, pretty close to the global average.
But an interesting point within North America, while the U.S. is obviously the biggest market by far, Canada actually shows a higher CAGR. It's 4.162%.
Oh, interesting. Higher than the U.S.
Yeah, higher than the U.S., which is at 3.049%, and Mexico at 2.766%.
Oh. Any thoughts on why Canada is growing faster?
It might suggest slightly faster demand growth or maybe more industrial integration using sodium percarbonate up there. Could be specific industry expansions or just, different consumer trends taking hold a bit quicker.
Okay. And finally, let's wrap up the regions with South America. Moderate growth here.
Moderate seems right.
The market was about $36.5 million. $36.545 million in 2021, expected to get to just over $50 million. $50.202 million by 2033. The CAGR is 2.785%, so a bit below the global average.
And within South America, Brazil is kind of leading the way with a CAGR of 3.082%. That reflects its ongoing industrial development, growing consumer market.
You're right.
Meanwhile, a place like Peru shows slower growth, just 1.627% CAGR. So again, you see different paces of industrialization and adoption across the continent.
Okay. Wow. We've crunched through a lot of numbers there, region by region. So after sifting through all that, what's the big takeaway? What does it all mean when you put it together?
Well, I think connecting it all. The really big story is that Yes, global demand is rising steadily. That 3.5% overall growth is solid. But the real story isn't just growth, it's where that growth is hitting
Right,
hardest.
the regional differences.
Exactly. We've clearly seen this acceleration in India, across big parts of Africa, especially that rest of Africa category, and in key Middle Eastern nations like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and even that surprising rest of Europe segment showing strong growth. And that really contrasts quite sharply with the slower, more modest growth in the really established mature economies, places like Japan, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Taiwan.
Okay.
So this pattern, this faster growth in specific developing or emerging markets, it tells a really profound story, I think. It highlights where new industrial capacity is really ramping up, where consumer needs are changing dramatically, and maybe where global manufacturing itself is shifting to meet new demands for essential chemicals like this one. It's like a lens, isn't it? A lens into the world's changing economic map.
What a journey just through these numbers. It really is incredible how one report, even on something as specific as sodium percarbonate, can light up so many different parts of the global economy. Gives you such precise details on these market shifts.
Absolutely.
So for you listening, maybe a final thought to chew on. Think about those higher growth rates in those sort of vague rest of categories, rest of Africa, rest of Europe. Maybe they aren't minor at all.
Hmm.
Could they actually be where the seeds of future industrial shifts are being planted? Untapped potential. New markets developing that we should be watching more closely.
Oh,
What's actually hidden inside those broad categories?
that's a great point. It raises this important question about how these very specific market reports, even for chemicals you might not think about often,
Mhm.
how they can actually be really powerful, really granular indicators of these bigger global economic stories, these emerging opportunities. They give you a unique, detailed view of how the world's industrial and consumer landscape is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other hidden market reports out there hold equally fascinating insights into our changing world?